Oh shit! I was gonna say I put away my notes, but I just remembered I didn't have them. I swear I must have them somewhere.
It's all right. The heat is getting older. Honestly, I think my brain stopped working because of the heat. Like all of last week, I was incapable of doing anything unless I went and sat in a cafe with air conditioning. Because then my brain, it was like my brain's made of silicon or something. I was like, I must cool it down.
We moved our mattress. We literally brought the mattress downstairs and have been sleeping in the living room.
We did two very hot nights. Me and Egg put our camping mattress, our air mattress up downstairs.
Well, see, we started with an air mattress and then we were like, this is going to last for another week and a half.
No,
we'll just bring down the normal mattress.
It was at that point when I found a load of you probably don't know, they're like yoga floor mats that like click together like a jigsaw, and they often have them. So I found a load of those in the craft room and realised I had enough to cover our entire bedroom window, so I just made a big panel and put it behind the curtains, closed the curtains, and then put a blanket on top, and it's like an icebox in there now. It's amazing. We just don't open it until the evening when it's dark, and then there's a breeze, and it's amazing.
We just look really janky because I taped aluminum foil on the windows.
I just feel like we probably look like the apocalypse.
We live next door to an abandoned house, or at least a house that looks abandoned. I swear I hear people in it, which makes me feel insane or like it's haunted. But it's it looks abandoned, and so that if you look at this abandoned house and then next door, then there's like aluminum foil taped up on the...
Yeah, and we're both here now with the fucking curtains open to let the light in so that we can record.
No, I'm using standing lamps.
Well, I turned my light on earlier and it just made everything orange, so I'm suffering.
Anyway,
and this is what goes in the social media clips later.
Anyway, what are we who's starting?
We're doing real person shipping. Should we start the podcast?
Or is that just our opening?
That's the opening. It's really bloody hot, guys. We don't want to do the opening properly. I'll give it a go. Hello and welcome to I'm a Fan of That, the podcast where we discuss stuff and don't overheat in a heat wave, even though we are. Oh my god, I can't even remember what the opening of the show is. That's how hot I am.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we've changed it.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I'm Olly. I am a pop culture author, writer, journalist, whatever. I don't even know what my job title is anymore. It's so many different things.
I am Vivian and Olly. I'm a pop anthropologist, which is a thing I made up.
We're doing so well here. This week we are discussing real person shipping.
Yes.
Or RPS. You may have also seen RPF for fandom, real person fandom. And real person shipping kind of is part of that. So we're probably going to touch on a lot of things here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to focus a bit on the shipping because at least a lot of our examples are related to the kind of people thinking that they can assume romantic connections between real human people.
Yeah. I think also real person fandom kind of that's liking pop stars and things like that. It's the Taylor Swift fandom. Like, it's that kind of stuff. And real person shipping is when people kind of veer off into this strange fantasy conspiracy theory land. And there are some
Which there's a lot of in Taylor Swift.
Yep. I mean, she's our favourite topic.
But
it's a really interesting conversation, and there's a lot of people who have a lot of things to say about it, of every variety. I've been reading a lot about this in this book, as Fandom as methodology, which people can't see, but
for the first time ever, I think Olly is coming with the academic research and I am coming with just the pop culture examples. It is normally the other way around, so this will be
fell down a rabbit hole. I really did. I went on. I won't be able to remember any of the papers I read or anything like that. I'll probably be able to tell you the Tumblrs that linked them, which is horrific.
Research is research.
Yeah, but this is a very interesting book, and as I said to Vivian before we started recording, I disagree with quite a lot of it, but it's interesting to read and see how people have interpreted stuff. And I think it's good to challenge your opinions on things, particularly in an academic setting, which I'm sure Vivian will agree with. But yeah, so you've encountered real person shipping, obviously, through Taylor Swift. Have you found it anywhere else in your life?
I was, I think I can't remember when I was watching it, but a couple of months ago now, I was watching The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is, it was a really great show. It's only about 3 seasons, I think. There's like 8 to 10 episodes each. I think it was an Amazon show? Amazon Prime?
On Netflix, yeah.
It was one of those. I pirated it. Yahoo! So I don't remember what it was on originally. It was a really good one. It's from a Jenny Han book. And they adapted it. Jenny Han was part of the script writing process. I've seen a couple of the Jenny Han adaptations now, and I really like them. I think they're cute, and they always have Asian woman representation, which I really appreciate, because obviously Jenny Han writes from that perspective, and I like that she advocates for continuing that even in the casting and stuff. So for people who don't know, The Summer I Turned Pretty is a high school drama type show that goes into college drama.
I knew that much about it.
It is a girl named Belly. I think it's Isabella technically, but they call her Belly, which is the worst nickname of Isabella, I think, in my opinion. Belly, who spends summers in with a rich family that like is friends. It's her mom's friend. They summer in a place and in Cousins. I don't know where that's supposed to be, but it's like a beach town. And she falls in love with both of the brothers of the of the family. So it's a love triangle involving 2 brothers.
My goodness.
Conrad and Jeremiah, and one of them is obviously superior, and we won't get into that. But
I love the names in all these things as well. Like, I feel like all of these sort of YA rom-com books, they have the most insane names. Like, do people really have these names? Is it American? I don't know. Because I've never met anyone called Conrad or Jeremiah in my entire life. Okay.
So it was fun. It's lighthearted. It was very drama, but like the kind of drama that doesn't like upset you. I mean, I don't know. The internet was afire with it, but for me, anyway, I didn't mind it. It was just super fun. I started watching it when season 3 was airing, and it was incredibly popular, and everyone was chatting about it. So I went back and watched all of it, and then caught up with the end of season 3, which was the end of the show when Belly ends up with Conrad. Spoiler alert.
I'm never gonna watch it.
I know.
I don't like rom-commy stuff. Isn't really my vibe. See, as we discussed on multiple.
Tom and I love rom-coms and romancy things, and so he didn't watch it with me, but he watched the most of season 3 with me, and he had a lot of opinions, which was very fun.
I tell a lie, that's not true. I like a rom-com movie because it is a length. There's a series where things go up and down and all that kind of stuff, and will they, won't they? I find frustrating.
I think the usefulness of this, and what I liked about it, was the fact that it was contained. So it was only 3 seasons, and it follows the actual stories of the novels, as opposed to it's just constantly going for 8 seasons until the funding gets plugged. It's like, no, this is the story as it was written.
Okay,
that has a definitive ending.
Allow for that, but
yeah. So it was. I think in that sense it was fine, but I get it. Okay, so the woman who plays Belly, whose name is Lola Tung, and the one who plays Conrad, Christopher Brinney, has been real life shipped. Now they both are in real relationships outside of the show. Whenever they're doing press tours with each other, everyone likes to read into it and watch it and talk about how they should be together. And apparently Christopher Brinney's partner was getting DMs telling them to break up with Christopher in order to let him be with Lola, who is clearly the one he should be with. All based off of the fact that their evidence that they have is the on-screen chemistry between them. Because there definitely is. I always struggle to read chemistry sometimes. I can see it on that show. There's a lot of romantic tension episodes, particularly in season 3, where there's no words. It's just them being in each other's proximity. They don't almost kiss or anything, but it's just the tension of 2 people in a room. It reads.
Acting.
I know. They are incredible actors in this. It's beautifully done, and you can really feel the tension. And people have just taken that to mean that therefore these 2 actors who are good at acting should therefore be dating in real life.
And I think it's interesting because you sometimes have instances real life instances where people are dating on set or whatever, and that comes through on the screen. And then sometimes they're Tom Holland and Zendaya, who are the best couple of all time. You know, just hands down, they are. That happens. It does happen, but it's not for anybody else to be involved in, and certainly not to send messages to somebody's girlfriend. That's weird. And I find it a bit strange because essentially what this feels like to me is the equivalent of like the tabloid press in like the late 90s and early noughties, where they would just be shock, Jennifer Aniston, Brad Pitt seen together kind of stuff, you know, where they would be doing these kind of things of like, I mean, in that instance, yes, they were having a dating affair, the Brangelina, whatever. It was an absolute shitstorm through the media, and it feels like a continuation of that because there's almost a like it's been okay for so long that people are like, well, it's okay and I can do it because I'm an individual and I have opinions. And also I think people feel like the internet's not real, like that they can say shit. I think we always come back to this, a lot of people feel like they can get a pass because it's on the internet, but it's just not true.
I also think there's a certain amount of people, celebrity figures have always, during that time period that you're talking about, which I think is where at least like me and you grew up, where celebrities were unreachable in a literal sense. Like there was no way for me to in any way get what I thought or felt across to Taylor Swift in 2010. It just wasn't.
I mean, Taylor Swift's interesting because
she was on Tumblr. That's a bad example.
Yeah, I was thinking like Taylor Swift. Actually, you could,
but like for Brad Pitt, like there was no way to contact Brad Pitt. There was no way that just some individual rando could get their thoughts and opinions to Brad Pitt. Nowadays, you can. But I think that there is still this unreality that is present for celebrities, and even people who are not like massive celebrities, like these I mean, they're basically kids. They're so young. And they're new to celebrity life because they are so young, and these are often like the first big thing that they've done, and it's suddenly
they don't have the checks and balances that Brad
they don't
Pitt has.
have...
They don't have agents who know how to protect them or don't care to protect them. They don't have family who know how to do it. Chaperone is a perfect example of this. She put massive boundaries in place, and people went, "How dare you do that?" And she went, "Whoa, of course I'm putting boundaries in place. I'm suddenly very famous," you know. And people don't like that either, which just isn't fair.
And so it's been, I think there's a certain amount of like the unreality of the internet mixed with the unreality of celebrities that I do think there is a genuine kind of thought that these are characters on TV that you're almost extending your interaction with. It's almost like a what are those games? An ARG. It's like everything's an ARG, and you can look for clues of what's going to happen while following these interviews and stuff, when it's like, no, that's just a person doing an interview. So
one of the things that I was reading about was to do with the cultural element of it, which is discussed a bit in this book, but also in several papers, about how essentially when you get into a circle of people who are all thinking like this, you're all feeding each other, and it's like a constant spiral of like, this is fine, and you're particularly fandoms around real life people. The example that was being used was Dan and Phil, who have recently talked a lot about how real life shipping affected their lives, and we'll get on to that. But how, because the fandom had a culture of, oh yeah, this is fine, anybody who was new joining the fandom was fed into that culture of this is, and like didn't really question it, or if they did, they didn't stay, because that was the cultural narrative there of like, of course we kind of, there's, oh my god, they're so cute, you know. And it was almost treated as harmless by the people in the fandom, because they were just like, but we love how cute they look together, whereas actually the active harm it was doing to the people they were talking about was much higher than I think a lot of people realised. And it's a very interesting thing that because that culture was the way it was, that it literally was, you either join and you continue it and you are part of it, or you don't stay, because you can't stay in a space that makes you uncomfortable. And I wonder if a lot of these real life shipping places are very similar in that they are continuing each other's stuff, and if you're not into it, you leave, and so only the people who are really into it stay, and they perpetuate that to the nth degree, essentially, as is often the case with fandom. You'll find something in fandom where you're like, what the fuck is this? How is this a thing that everybody in the fandom knows about? Whereas I, as a newcomer, don't have any idea what it is, and it's a joke from years ago that's, like, spiraled into something. Like, one of the things at the moment that's, like, everywhere, Project Hail Mary, it's not real-life shipping, but there is a ship with... there are several ships, but spaceships. But, like, there is a relationship ship within the fandom that was basically come up with by some people on Tumblr and is now, like, everywhere. I personally don't like it. I ignore it because I don't think it was a necessary addition. And that's fine, they do their thing. But it is, like, so heavily perpetuated within months that that's, like, gonna be everywhere. And think about how much that spreads out through these spaces is really interesting. And shipping as well, because it's fun, right? It's fun. You get to read the fanfic and make the art and talk about it, and it's fun. And particularly with fictional characters, it's a great way to, you know, talk more about the story and about character development and analysis and how you see them. And there's all this meta commentary that goes alongside it that people forget about. And because a lot of it is character analysis and I think this character is like this, and therefore I think they work well with this character because of these reasons, that kind of stuff. And people are putting that onto real people.
Yeah.
Who you don't know. You could doing it with a fictional person is absolutely fine. They're not real. They can be whatever you want them to be. Even if you want to argue about it. But they're not real. A real person, and I have seen people argue that, like, essentially real life shipping and real life fandom is absolutely fine because essentially that person should just not know about it. And they should stay out of fandom spaces. And while I agree that probably people should try to stay out of their own fandom spaces, you cannot avoid it. It's the internet.
Yeah, and there are certain ways to avoid certain things, but I think at a certain... Oh my God, how many times can I say certain? At a particular point, there's also people who do, like, almost try to reach out as well. Yeah. So, like, I listen to a reality TV show recap podcast, and whenever they hear that one of the housewives or whatever is listening, they always go, no, get out. Like, this isn't for you. Like, you need to leave. It's just for your best interest that you do not listen to us.
There's a reason that most Twitch streamers, YouTubers, whatever, if they have a Discord community, they have moderators and they're not the one running it.
Yeah.
You know, even if they drop in from time to time to say hi, they are not looking at things, they are leaving it to the moderator. There's a reason for that. And it's so they don't see all your crazy bullshit, guys. And also so you have freedom to talk about stuff without them seeing your crazy bullshit, you know, and feeling policed. But it always spills over. It's very difficult for it not to. People are curious. People will look. I mean, it's a running joke on Taskmaster that Greg and Alex have absolutely looked up fan fiction. And I think they've even read some on their podcast, which is strange. And very funny, but strange. And obviously they take it all in good fun and complete jest, and it doesn't affect them at all. But that's not the case for everybody, particularly younger people, where it's, you know, they're two adult male comedians who've, you know, got partners and lives and all this sort of stuff, right? Like, it's a very different thing to do it to them. But then I don't know if you remember the many interviews that Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman had to suffer through with being shown Sherlock fan art and fanfic and all this sort of stuff. It's like, why are you doing that? Why? Like, it's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
But I think we probably ought to talk a bit about Dan and Phil, and then we'll talk about One Direction.
Yeah, I think it was... Dan and Phil was, I think, the inspiration point for us doing this episode. We wanted to talk about it, but then kind of use that as a jumping off point. But then, I don't know, the world got crazy because now we can have so many examples.
I mean, Dan and Phil are really interesting because as they've been YouTubers for probably 2 decades now, edging that way, certainly. And they have announced that they are a couple, and they have been for some time. However, because their relationship as friends was online and was very public, and that was how they set up their channel together, they were doing everything together, they started getting shipped as a couple before they were even together, to the point that they didn't want to announce or say anything because they did not want to validate the way the fans were behaving, because it had already become so invasive to their lives and quite anxiety inducing for them with seeing how people were talking about them and all this sort of stuff, and that if they broke up all this sort of stuff, what would happen, la la la. And they did not feel comfortable in announcing it because even though they were in a relationship and people had obviously caught on to some of their chemistry or whatever, like you said, people have chemistry on set, they had become so kind of rampant in this. We're talking like fan cams, art, fic, a full shipping ecosystem around two, and let us remember, they are now in their 30s, which means they were teenagers and in their early 20s at the time. The hardest point in any human's life, let's be honest. Had people literally going, oh my god, I want them to kiss, and other things. And yeah, it was I do recommend looking up that. They have done a whole video, which we will link, talking about the effect it had on them. And it's quite a hard watch, actually. And it does make me go, anybody who kind of says that it's okay to ship real people, and I do understand the argument, because essentially it's an argument about censorship and being like, you shouldn't censor people, and I understand that, because where does the line get drawn? But I do think it is worth, from just a point of view of understanding humans and understanding other people's points of view, watching and going, this is maybe something I should not partake in because of the damage it can do. That it's a very interesting and nuanced conversation in regard to what, when you bring in the censorship argument, it's quite tricky. And like I said, I do understand where people are coming from. I still think it's icky. And my ickiness should not stop people doing things, I suppose.
Well, it's kind of like the thing of how, we're not completely free of censorship in, a normal, quote, freedom of speech kind of environments. Like, you can't shout fire in a crowded room for no reason, because it creates panic, it can harm people. You can't create death threats and not have any repercussions, because that is damaging and can harm people. Yeah. Like, there are things that are put in place. Verbal harassment is a crime. There are, it's not often prosecuted, but it is. Yeah. And so there are things that we have put in place, and I think that the internet is this weird, lawless place. And there isn't a lot of control. That is where all the death threats kind of can proliferate. That is where there isn't any kind of control. And part of what can be done is something like what you were saying, of having spaces where Dan and Phil can't get in, and that's where you put that stuff.
Yeah. But you don't share it to them.
And you don't share it with them. You don't put it out in public, but you're still able to do the thing. Or you can write your fanfic, but maybe don't throw it where they can see it. You can still do it, and you can share it with your friends, and you can enjoy that space without it being necessarily broadcast to millions of people. There's there's a sliding scale there that I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a very complex issue, because there will be some people who hunt things down. Yeah. And you have to be like, well, you've done that to yourself. Yeah. And then there are people who go the complete opposite way, as we said, who start messaging these people and start sharing this stuff to them. And it's really annoying when some of those people are journalists.
Yeah.
So I think we maybe need to talk a little bit about the Caitlin Moran thing. I brought up Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman, and Caitlin Moran, who is a journalist, writer, commentator, very famously in a live interview read out loud something that was essentially Sherlock fanfic, but also kind of real person shipping it, edged into it. It was sort of an AU fic to them on national radio. She just did that. And that is deeply inappropriate to do to somebody. And since then, we have seen a lot more things like that happen, where people have been shown fan art and fanfic, they've talked about it, all that kind of stuff. It's become very much in the public eye that people know that these things exist, and they want to find them because they think it's funny, A, to make fun of fanfic writers, and B, to kind of do that sort of shock content journalism. To the point that I was contacted by a national television channel asking for advice on a TV show that was going to be about writing people who'd write fanfic, and then they'd get about comedians, and then they'd get the comedians to act out that fanfic on TV. Why would you do this? Because they thought it would be shocking, funny TV, and this is what I mean, is that when it's perpetuated into an ecosystem outside of those spaces by people who should know better and who are doing it purely for shock value, all of the lines disappear. they all go because people are like, oh, okay, that's fine then. And there will be people who aren't the ones necessarily writing or reading, even participating in these fandoms, who start as a funny bit sending these fics and these pictures and stuff to the people it involves. And then the new people enter the fandom and think that's something you do and all that stuff and blah, 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 blah. And you end up in this place. TikTok definitely doesn't help. Like you said, access certainly doesn't help.
Journalists, I have a problem with journalists. You know this. I have complained to you about journalists many a time. But I think there is not a lot of ethical work or instruction given to journalists in a way that there should be. I think the ethics that are typically more around protecting sources and not necessarily about what you actually are doing and what that is affecting the people that you're writing about. Sources being protected is one thing, and that's great, but you also need to have a certain level of protection towards what you're actually doing. And this is something that I really, really, really hate the form of journalism where they hide and pretend that they're not a journalist and go into a space and pretend that they're one of them and then end up writing this huge tell-all explaining all of the things that went on in this kind of secretive space. It is so damaging. It is so horrendous. It is so unethical. And a lot of the times and academics do bad shit too. And I find that every time I'm entering a space, I'm having to like prove that I'm not a bad journalist. I'm not a bad academic. I am here to actually protect the people, but also be objective at the same time. And you would think that this would be more important in spaces like going into a Muslim community or something like that. But it happens all the time, even in spaces not like that. Like me and you had lots of conversations when I was doing the research on cosplay. And I had, I think, 3 different gatekeepers in the community. Gatekeepers for academic work is just literally the people who give you access to more members of the community. Holly was one of my gatekeepers. And I also had another one, and they literally were people who went out and had to tell people, no, this person's okay. Like, I had a conversation with them, and they seem safe, and they seem okay, and we had a lot of conversation about these things that really matter. So, yes, you will be fine having a conversation with them. Yeah. And I needed that because of how many people instantly shut down when I put on a press badge or I said I was doing research because of the damage that these things have caused.
And it's one of the reasons that when I do any documentary work or journalistic style work for cosplay or costuming in general, which I do still do from time to time, you know, I enjoy doing it. I have a piece out right now. It's really good. It's about medieval revival. It's in a magazine called Simply Sewing, which is the premier UK sewing magazine. We should all go read it. Anyway, when I'm doing that, particularly when I'm interviewing people, whether that's Vox Pop style interviews, documentary style interviews, whatever, I tend to approach them in cosplay myself. I will wear a cosplay of my own because very clearly mine are handmade. They are handmade, as you probably all know, to a quite high standard. But it basically shows that I'm not coming in wearing a cheap ass costume that I've bought off the internet quickly to be like, I'm one of you, right? They are clearly something that has taken time and effort to make, and I am wearing them. I could have commissioned them, but at the same time, that's also a lot of money just for Vox Pops. And what it does on purpose, I do it on purpose. I'll wear stuff that I know I look kind of like I know what I'm talking about if I'm asking about cosplay and I'm wearing it. Not, again, whatever. But like, I do it on purpose. I'll wear my best stuff a lot of the time, which is weird because I don't necessarily do that if I'm judging cosplay competitions. Sometimes I wear what's easy when I'm judging cosplay competitions, put the nice stuff on later. But it does mean that people they trust me. They know that they're more likely to understand that I'm not going to put this out in a bad light or whatever, or we're going to have a nice conversation. And that is really important. And I think that's part of the problem is that and we've talked about this, when journalists go into these spaces, take what they want, do this, pretend they are somebody, and then they take it out, and then, like I said, they perpetuate these bad practices, or should we say less known practices, particularly, and maybe some of the more underground ones. I don't necessarily want to call them. It's difficult. Some, as we've said, some are bad, because they affect people negatively. But they then perpetuate that negativity, I suppose.
There's a lot of lack of protection that is happening there towards the people, the actors and stuff that you're saying, towards the people who wrote it. And I think there's also a certain level of, like, even, taking certain elements out of it. I just don't, I think you shouldn't be reading, because most of the time these are sexual, right? They don't pick fun, lighthearted, just light romance.
They don't pick Jane fic.
No, of course
no one's
not.
picking Jen fic.
So they're
going straight to M. They're going on AO3, M.
So, but, like, there is something really unethical about reading sexual content to somebody who hasn't consented to that.
Yes.
Like, that feels like a level of sexual harassment. Okay, so if you are one of our lovely listeners that do not like when I talk about Taylor Swift, go like, subscribe, do all the things. See you next time. Bye. All right, we're going to talk about Taylor Swift now.
It is time.
Because
we've had Ollie's emotional breakdown about fandom spaces being a bit shit.
Now we're going to talk about something fun. We're going to talk about Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift got married. We're going to talk, though, about some of the real-life shipping that happens with Taylor Swift. There's a group of people called Gaylors, who are people who believe that Taylor Swift is secretly gay.
I have got a Shanspeare. Anyone who doesn't watch Shanspeare, you should. She's great. Video saved at the moment, just called the Gaylor Conspiracy, and I've been waiting to watch it. I'm just like, I've got to wait to watch this. I'm so excited.
So there is a lot to this. We are not going to talk about all of it because I think it would be an entire episode in and of itself. I'm also doing a load of research into conspiracy theory construction. I have friends who research and specialize in it, so I'm able to kind of get a little bit of curated bibliography.
I love the idea that you're going to write a whole chapter in a book about Taylor Swift conspiracy theories, having been informed by people who study real conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
Real, in inverted commas. Taylor Swift conspiracy theories are real too.
So, a lot of the Taylor Swift Gaylor stuff is focused on, it's not exclusively, but a lot of it is focused on her relationship with the model Karlie Kloss.
Okay.
So her and Karlie were really good friends at one point in time and took a lot of photos together, were out together, they partied together, they went out to dinner together, you know what girlfriends do. And they took a lot of photos. And during this time, Taylor was also in a lot of various romantic relationships that people kind of either believed or didn't believe. So, for example, her relationship with Harry Styles is kind of largely considered now to be a showmance, that they weren't really dating. It was kind of that. Yeah, it was kind of contrived by the industry to push both into higher expectations, but that they didn't actually date. No. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. That's the current conspiracy theory, I guess, is that it was a showmance. So this is kind of all around this time. When Taylor got engaged to Travis Kelce, people thought this would kind of put an end to the Gaylor conspiracy. It has, kind of.
Yeah.
But not massively. I think there's been some people readjusting. There's an incredibly popular Taylor Swift creator who I actually got to interview for my research project, who used to be a Gaylor and now isn't. So it was really fascinating to talk to her about why she thought the way that she did and how she had kind of gotten deep into it, and then what made her change her mind and come out of it. Weirdly, and this is kind of a separate conversation about biphobia in contemporary society, but not very many of the Gaylors can kind of consider bi as an option.
That's weird.
Because the idea is like, oh, she must not be gay because she's with a man now. And that's kind
That's not how that works.
Yes, I am aware. So that's why I feel bad because I'm not a Gaylor, but there's a side of me that's like, but she could be bi. Like,
no, very reasonably.
I'm not speculating. I'm just saying, don't forget that bi women exist.
Yeah.
Not to continue this. But Karlie Kloss and Taylor Swift had a falling out at some point From what I remember, I haven't done a whole lot of research on various lores. I mostly get it from interviews and chats with people. But from what I gather, we don't really fully know what it was that had a falling out between them as friends. And
What? We don't know the intimate personal relationships of a celebrity's life? What?
Yeah, I know. Especially Taylor Swift.
I mean, yeah.
But we can assume, I think... At least I assume that this might have at least played a part. I think that if I was already having a friendship on the rocks, what might push me to maybe not mend it is the idea that I have millions of people speculating on my sexuality because of my relationship with this person. I don't know. But things were sparked again. The Gaylors were dying down, and then they got sparked up again because Karlie Kloss was invited to the wedding.
Are people all right? Because also, I mean, I feel like this every time we talk about Taylor Swift, but it actually doesn't matter. Like, she, like you said, could very well be bisexual, and that's fine, and that's her personal business. But she has married a man.
Yes.
She has married this man who plays the football.
He plays the footy ball.
He plays the footy ball.
Well, I guess American not really the footy ball. The throwy footy ball.
The American one, yeah. I mean, okay, so they've all started up again about this, and that's so weird. From the point of view of if you are a conspiracy theorist human, of course that was going to trigger the conspiracy theorist brain. Of course it was. It's like tailored to trigger that. But at the same time, it's kind of... You'd think a wedding would end it, you know. And also, again, you're right, she could just be bi-curious, bisexual, bi-curious, who knows, you know.
But I think this kind of is part of the Dan and Phil speculation, which I think, because there's an extra layer, I think, on some of the real-life shipping when it comes into things like Gaylor and Dan and Phil, where when it's also a speculation on sexual orientation.
Yes.
Which it sucks that that's not how it is for a straight couple. It should also be a speculation on sexual orientation when you're like, I suspect they're straight and should be together. But it, unfortunately, because that is the default for our society, it doesn't seem that way.
Yes. And we've seen this a lot with people when they play queer characters kind of getting hounded for their sexuality.
Yes.
We've seen it with Heated Rivalry, with Heartstopper.
I was about to say Heartstopper.
I have to say my own current fandom are guilty of it with certain actors. And people who aren't watching the stream, I'm wearing a KCD shirt in case anybody didn't know that it's KCD. You know, there's certainly behaviour like that is very common around queer characters. People playing queer characters in general, to be like, prove that you're queer enough to be this character. Writers have it even, like the writer of Heated Rivalry had people hounding her to be like, you're a straight woman, how dare you write about queer stuff, till eventually she had to out herself. I believe she said she was bisexual, but don't quote me on that, but I do know that she was being treated incredibly badly by people over the fact that she, a presumed straight woman, was writing queer romance.
Yeah. And
I never quite understood that attitude. Particularly of actors, people play characters all the time. Nicholas Hoult isn't a blue furry mutant, as far as I'm aware, nor is he an evil, bald megalomaniac. You know, so great example, Nicholas Hoult. Well done, me. But, you know, he's not... And while I do understand from the point of view of certain things, you want somebody of, you know, I do think that it is preferred and probably the best choice to have a trans person play a trans character, for example. Though, of course, if you're telling a trans, like, the story of, like, transition, that's quite a tricky one to do, but maybe we should stop just telling everybody's pain stories. That would be good. But at the same time, it's an actor is playing a part because they're an actor. They're good at acting. They will put their... You know, they'll do the work and they'll do the job that they've been hired to do. And, you know, and if you're Scarlett Johansson, you'll do all the jobs you're hired to do, including playing an Asian woman. Again,
I get it.
Complicated and nuanced space. But at the same time, you should not hound an actor to prove their sexuality because they have played a queer character. they will tell you in their own time. And in particular in the case of Heartstopper, given that story is about not outing people and letting them take time to figure out their own sexuality. There was a level of irony involved,
and I get that there's a lot of fear around queer baiting, but I feel like in a show that is quite clearly not queer baiting.
You can't queer bait in real life. That's just not something.
That's just queering.
That's just
Heartstopper's just queer.
You're just queer, right? That the story, the piece of it, and I think this is where we come back to that very blurred line, is that people are deeply unable to divorce fiction and reality for some reason. There are people who are unable to go, but I've watched this show that was clearly a queer story told, that has told this lovely, Heartstopper is lovely and fluffy and whatever, and it's a lovely queer story that's been told, and therefore that needs to translate into reality. I don't see why it should,
I think it's almost both happening at the same time. It's people kind of taking the fiction into real life in the sense of like, well, you have to be gay in order to be presenting gay in this story.
And also the same with the relationships, right? That you have
like,
to be dating this person. Like you said at the beginning with The Summer I Turned Pretty, it's like we want the actors to be dating because they've got all this chemistry on screen.
But
I
then
think it's a very similar thing.
Also, I think it's the other way around too, where it's not allowing fiction to impact at all on real life, in the sense of like, well, here's this fiction story with this beautiful lesson, and I'm not going to let that actually impact my real life experiences, despite the fact that that's kind of the bit that is supposed to be impacted by it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think particularly in these cases where they are own voice stories a lot of the time, and there are people who are involved, like Heartstopper does have queer cast members. Actively, there are queer cast members there. They did a great job with having trans people, all that kind of stuff. They did a great job with it. Why does it need to be everything? Why do you need to hound one of the actors to get your fix of being right or what? It's very strange. When the show has gone out of its way to, in both its story and in the reality in which they told it, to champion queer voices, like it was a very odd choice.
I think one of the weird complicated things about Taylor Swift's thing is she's very good at writing how something feels more than what it actually is. So, obviously people can try to read the exactness of things in her lyrics, but as she's gotten older, I think she's actually gotten better at complicating that and maybe writing more akin to how something feels rather than what actually literally happened. I think Tortured Poets Department is a really good example of that. I think there's a lot of people trying to say, oh, this is about Maddie and this one's about this, and I think all of the songs are about both of them. It's all ambiguous and mixed, and it's complicated, even though you might only be saying it's about one person. That's not necessarily how it felt. So that's kind of what it is. But anyway, I think that because of that, when you're talking about love and emotions and relationships, those can be platonic and they can be romantic, and it depends on your own experience and how you're reading into it. I had a participant, for example, who talked to me about the song The Black Dog, which is often interpreted as being about a romantic relationship. This particular person read it purely as a friendship breakdown, because they had a friendship breakup, and friendship breakups hurt so hard. They hit so hard, and it happened right as they were moving to another country. So this person was incredibly separated from people, very much alone, and really this song seemed to encapsulate that whole experience for this person. And it's about a friendship for them. And so I think sometimes when Taylor's writing about a friendship or she's writing about a romance, I think it's very easy to flip them depending on your own experiences, because especially female friendships, I think regardless of sexual orientation, female friendships have a very special type of bond and connection and relationship with each other that I think can be very easily read queer, despite not always necessarily being that way. So
we've all had one best friend where that was the, you know, you kind of go, yeah. Or everyone around you just assumes you were dating and you're like, no.
Yeah. I had somebody thought that me and my sister were dating at one point because we're just very like touchy, and I mean particularly her, like I'm different with all of my family relationships, and she's a very touchy person, so I would be very touchy with her, and we were both in drama together, and she would be like hanging on me and like always coming up to hug and stuff, and people just assumed we were dating, and I'm like, no, that's my sister, you fucking weirdo.
I think this is the other reason that we end up with real person shipping, and you've just touched on something. I think our society is not very good at understanding intense friendships as platonic. It has to be romantic. If you have an intense emotional connection with somebody, it must therefore be romantic, and therefore we must ship them. They must do this. And I know there's always this thing of like, why can't two guys just be friends? And, you know, that is kind of just a homophobic thing to say, yes, in regards to shipping. Or anything, or whatever. But, like, I do genuinely think two ideas can be true at once. That we as a society put so much onus on romantic relationship being the ultimate type of relationship that anybody could want. And therefore, any big emotional connection where you're very touchy with somebody, very intense with somebody, must therefore be romantic rather than platonic. Or even, you know, familial.
Yeah.
Therefore, you know, and it's like, that is strange, you know, that, and I think that is maybe why we end up in these things of real person shipping, is because we see people who have very intense relationships with each other and assume it therefore is romantic, rather than, and I said, we've all had that best friend or that person in our lives at some point. I think particularly if you are born and socialized female, like, complicated, but, you know, certainly if you're socialized female, you have those very emotional, intense relationships with people every so often, and almost romantic friendships, but they are still platonic, you know. And that's something where I think, particularly then when something like that is seen in men, that people go, well, they must be gay. And that they may well be, but also is that the job of the general public who do not know those people to jump to that conclusion? And the answer is no. You need to let people will tell you if they want to tell you. They will talk about their relationships if they want to talk about their relationships. And we really don't have any right to force our opinions on anyone. Even if we want to speculate. I mean, who hasn't gossiped about they'd be so cute together. Oh, you know, they'd be really nice. You know, I've never actually played matchmaker because I do think that would be odd. But, like, people do that all the time. They set their friends up on blind dates and stuff, right? It is something we do. And so there's no harm in, as we said, going into a Discord server, a private chat, group chat, whatever, with friends and having a talk about your favourite celebrities and being like, oh, they'd be so cute together. But it's when it goes beyond that, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know. But yes, the friendship thing. There it is. We found the nub of the problem.
I think there's a massive social cultural problem of people being unable to disentangle all the different forms of attraction and interests and types of relationships that exist between platonic, romantic, intellectual, social, you know, sexual. They're untangling them is really hard, especially when you bring in neurodivergence. Yeah. Like, I was having a conversation with somebody who was saying that they didn't know if they were aromantic or just autistic. They have no idea. It's because it's like, I don't get it. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know which one. And they ended up resolving. We had a really long conversation. They ended up resolving being like, I don't know. I just am what I am, and there's no label that I can put on it because I have no idea.
I saw someone the other day, and this is a complete sort of tangent, but basically going, I think I am autism gendered. Because I don't know how to. I am just autism, and gender makes no sense.
All I am is autism.
I know, and I was like, "What a that a." I mean, they were obviously very tongue in cheek doing this. I was like, "It's very funny," but also,
could be.
Anyway. And that is not to disregard anyone's trans identities at all. It is just sometimes, as an autistic person, as you said, sometimes it's very difficult to be like, I don't know. I feel like we've come to a natural conclusion here because we've started talking about autism
you know, the way that all conversations end.
That's the natural end point. We're talking about the tism. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got something out of this, something valuable, thoughtful. Maybe you disagree with us. Tell us if you disagree with us. That would be interesting. We always like hearing people's disagreements.
Yes.
Means we can go away and have a think. Show notes, etc. And everything we've mentioned will be in the show notes. And remember to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a review. They're always very helpful. And we will be back soon. Goodbye.
Bye.